The front door slammed, hard enough to shake the picture frames on the wall. Raiden's helmet hit the couch, bounced, and rolled across the floor until it knocked against a chair leg and stopped. His boots thudded down the hallway, each step heavy and sharp. Halfway to the kitchen, he stopped. Something was wrong with the sound of his own house. It wasn't quiet anymore. A thin whooping noise cut through the air. Rubber on wood. A high, breathless laugh. A strange wail that rose and fell like a siren. It came from the living room, from the space he had walked through 1,000 times in silence. Raiden stepped closer. A skinny boy spun in the middle of the room, bare feet sliding on the wooden floor. His shirt hung off one shoulder, torn at the collar. His elbows swung wide as he leaned into an invisible curve, hands gripping air like handlebars. His lips made loud siren sounds, woo-woo, then cut to a deep rumble as he dipped low, pretending to scrape his knee on the ground. He slipped. One foot shot out, his heel skidded, his palms slapped the floor, and his body rolled onto his back. He blinked at the ceiling, eyes big, then kicked his legs in the air like a tipped-over beetle, making little choking engine noises. A sharp laugh burst out from the side of the room. Hylia. She sat in her wheelchair, blanket twisted around her legs, hair tied back in a loose knot. Her hand covered her mouth for half a second, then dropped. The laugh kept coming, louder now, shaking her shoulders. Her eyes shone with wetness. She tried to catch her breath and failed, clutching at the armrests like they were the only things holding her to the earth. Do it again, she gasped. The crash. Do it again. The boy rolled to his side, sprang up, slapped the dust from his knees, and threw himself back into the act. He pumped his arms like pistons, stumbled on purpose, twisted his face into a fake scream as he acted out another slow-motion fall. Hylia's hand slammed against the metal of the wheelchair, a wild, offbeat clap. The sound bounced off the walls, bright and sharp. Raiden moved. His boots hammered across the floor. The siren noise stopped mid-note. The boy's grin faded as a large hand closed around the back of his shirt and hauled him off his feet. Fabric bit into the boy's neck. His bare toes curled and clawed at the air before finding the floor again. Raiden yanked him close until the boy's breath hit his chest. Brown eyes met gray. Up close, the boy's face looked younger than his body. Dirt smudged his cheek. One eyebrow carried a faint scar. His lips parted, but the words stuck. His chest rose and fell too fast. Raiden's jaw worked. His fingers tightened in the cloth. Behind them, Hylia's wheelchair squeaked. "Dad," she shouted. "No." The room shrank to 3 points. Raiden's fist, the boy's collar, Hylia's voice. Raiden didn't look at her yet. His gaze stayed locked on the stranger. The thick cords in his neck stood out. "You break into my house," he said, voice low and rough. "You dance over my floor like it's a joke. You think that's funny?" The boy's throat bobbed. "I thought," his voice cracked. He swallowed and tried again. "I thought she needed it." Hylia's wheels creaked. She tried to push herself closer. Her hand slid on the rubber, but the chair inched forward. "He didn't break anything," she said. "He's not stealing. He just—" Her sentence stopped on a sharp inhale. Her right heel bounced against the metal footrest. A small tap, almost nothing. Then another, harder this time. A clear knock of bone on steel. Hylia's eyes dropped, then widened. Her fingers dug into the armrests. Her lips trembled. "Dad," she whispered. "My foot." The boy's gaze flicked down too, then back up. Raiden's eyes followed. The foot moved again. Not a spasm. A small, stubborn kick, as if the leg was trying to remind the body it was still there. For months, that leg had hung like dead weight. Nurses had lifted it, turned it, strapped it, moved it for her. Hylia herself had stared at it the way a person stares at a locked door. Now it knocked on metal. Tap, tap. Raiden's grip loosened without permission. The boy's collar sagged in his hand. Hylia laughed again, but this time there was a wild edge to it, almost a sob. "Did you see that?" she asked, voice high, scared of the answer. Raiden's throat closed. Every hallway and every clinic flashed through his head. The white coats, the calm voices, the lists of things his daughter might never do again. He had carried all of that home like a weight on his shoulders. Now a barefoot stranger in a torn shirt had walked into his living room and cracked it open with a stupid fake siren and a pretend crash. The boy shifted, the back of his neck still trapped in Raiden's fist. "I don't want trouble," he said, softer now. "I just wanted her to laugh. That's all." Hylia's hand reached out, fingers shaking, stretching toward both of them. "Dad, please," she said. "Don't send him away." The old rules pounded in Raiden's head like distant thunder. No strangers. No weakness. No mercy for people who cross your line. Another rule, older and deeper, pushed back. His daughter's smile. His daughter's foot. His daughter's voice, calling out for someone who wasn't him. For a long second, the man who lived by the patch on his back stared at the boy who lived by dancing on other people's streets. The next choice he made would decide which man he wanted to be. If you're still here, if something in this scene pulled at you, tap subscribe right now. People who think kids like this boy are just trouble won't make it this far. They don't want to hear what happens when a hard man's rules meet a child's laugh. Before that day, this house had already lived 2 different lives. In the first life, the garage door stayed open from morning till night. Wrenches clinked. An old radio rattled out rock songs. Men in vests leaned against door frames, coffee in one hand, cigarette in the other, talking in low voices that turned sharp and loud when a joke hit right. Engines coughed, spat, and roared back to life under Raiden's hands. Helia grew up in that noise. As a little girl, she dragged a milk crate into the corner and claimed it as her throne. Her feet didn't touch the floor yet. Every time a bike fired up, she jumped, then grinned, then shouted for him to do it again. She chased bolts that rolled away. She held flashlights at crooked angles. She smeared grease on her cheeks like war paint. On slow afternoons, Raiden lifted her onto a low bike and let her sit upright. Her hands wrapped around the grips, small fingers barely reaching. He stood beside her, one big hand on the seat, the other on her shoulder. "Feel that," he would say, nudging the throttle. The frame vibrated under her. That's what freedom feels like. On certain weekends, when the roads were clear and the club ride wasn't too rough, he strapped a helmet over her braids and let her ride behind him. Her arms circled his waist, snug. Each time he leaned into a turn, she leaned with him, trusting his angle, trusting the road. People at the diner knew his order by heart. Gas station attendants waved when they saw his bike. His club brothers slapped his back, called him by road names that sounded like steel and gravel. Behind all of it, one thought kept him steady. Whatever he was out there, he was something better at home. He was Helia's dad. The second life began with a sound Raiden could not get out of his head. Metal grinding on asphalt. A horn that came too late. A scream cut in half. On that night, the club rides, the jokes, the open road, all of it shrank to the inside of an ambulance. Red lights bounced off the inside of the windows. Helia's fingers lay limp against the white sheet. The nurse adjusted something on a monitor. Raiden's knees pressed into the floor of the moving vehicle, his hand hovering an inch above his daughter's shoulder, afraid to touch, afraid not to. In the hospital, machines beeped in rhythms that meant nothing to him. He watched numbers change. He watched doctors come and go. He signed papers. He stared at doors that didn't open fast enough. When Helia finally opened her eyes and whispered, "Dad?" he leaned so close his forehead touched her hair. Later, when she tried to move her legs and they didn't answer, he pretended not to see the panic in her face. He talked about therapy, about special exercises, about the best doctors. He said, "We'll fix this," like it was just another broken engine. He took her to every place anyone recommended. He waited in rooms that smelled like hand sanitizer, watching her push her arms against rubber bands, trying to pull her own body up. He saw the sweat, the bite marks on her lower lip when she tried not to cry. Doctors started using smaller words. Maybe. Some. Limited. They also used big ones. Permanent. Damage. Accept. Helia listened until she couldn't anymore. At home, she rolled herself into her room and pulled the curtain half shut. The posters on her wall watched her in silence. The guitar in the corner gathered dust. The garage changed too. The open door stayed shut more often. Bikes came in less. Some of the old brothers dropped by in pairs, the smell of exhaust still clinging to their jackets. They stood beside him in the driveway and talked about open roads and wild nights like they were offering him a drink he didn't want anymore. "Come out," they said. "Clear your head. She'll be fine for a few hours." Raiden's jaw tightened. His eyes slid toward the window where a curtain hung still. He shook his head and said he had work. Sometimes he lied and said he had too many orders. The truth sat in his throat. He couldn't stand the idea of her calling for him and hearing only an empty house answer. So he stayed. He stayed in the quiet. He moved tools from one drawer to another. He took apart an old engine that didn't need fixing. At night, with the house asleep, he held his old leather vest in his hands. The patch on the back showed a skull with wings, flames curling at the edges. The word that had once made his chest swell sat above it in white stitching. Loyalty. His fingers traced it again and again. Loyalty to who? To what? Upstairs, a wheelchair squeaked when Helia shifted. Down the street, a dog barked. Farther away, an engine passed, then faded. On the other side of town, under a concrete bridge, the world sounded different. Water dripped from a crack in the ceiling into a shallow puddle. Cars rushed overhead, dull thunder rolling on and on. Cardboard rustled. A boy with thin arms and dark hair stood on a patch of dry ground, eyes closed. His jeans hung loose at the waist. His shirt was 2 sizes too big. His toes stuck out from the front of his shoes where the rubber had split. He bounced on his heels, then let his body fall into a clumsy spin. He swung his arms like windmill blades. He stomped, slid, and hopped over an invisible line on the concrete. His shadow copied him on the wall, stretched and wobbly in the dim light. When his stomach growled, he danced harder. He pretended there was a crowd watching from the riverbank. He imagined claps, whistles, even a few laughs. In his head, he bowed low and coins rained into his hands. In real life, the only sound was his own breathing. His name was Moreau. No one said it out loud very often. He moved from corner to corner during the day, parking lots, gas station exits, the sidewalk next to the strip of biker bars. He wiped windshields for drivers who rolled their eyes. He did little wind-up robot dances at red lights, hoping someone would drop a coin or two into his cap. Most nights, nothing extra came. But sometimes, one person smiled. Sometimes, one person laughed. That was enough to keep his feet moving. One afternoon, while Moreau practiced a silly, jerky march outside a liquor store, a group of bikers rumbled past. Their engines shook the air. Their vests flashed colors and patches. One man turned his head and looked down at the boy on the sidewalk. For a second, their eyes met. The man's beard was gray. A small scar cut through his eyebrow. His hands held the handlebars with easy strength. He looked away. The bike rolled on. Miro's steps stuttered, then found their rhythm again. He didn't know the man's name. He didn't know that just a few streets over, inside a quiet house, a girl stared at her unmoving legs and wished someone, anyone, would drag her out of the dark with a stupid joke or a ridiculous dance. He only knew that when he moved, the world felt a little less heavy. And the world, without saying a word, was already shifting to move him toward that house. If you think kids like Moreau deserve more than a cold sidewalk and a quick glance, hit like and comment he matters right now. People who cross the street to avoid boys like him won't. They never stay long enough to see what happens when a stranger's small joy crashes into a broken family. Raiden's fingers finally uncurled from the boy's collar. The fabric slipped from his hand. The boy dropped back onto his own feet, shoulders hunching like he expected the grip to return at any second. A red mark circled his throat where the shirt had twisted. Helia's hand hung in the air between them, still reaching. No one spoke. The only sound was the tiny knock of her heel against the metal footrest. One last little tap, like the leg was trying to prove it hadn't been a trick. Raiden let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "You," he said to the boy, voice low but not as sharp. "Stay where I can see you." The boy blinked. "I didn't come to. Did I ask?" Raiden cut in. "You talk too much for someone who walks into a stranger's living room." A flash of something like humor tugged at the corner of the boy's mouth, but he swallowed it back. Helia's fingers finally dropped to her lap. Her eyes bounced between them, wide and bright. "Dad," she said softly. "Can he finish?" Just the thing he was doing. The crash. Raiden turned his head toward her. Her cheeks were still pink. A curl of hair had fallen across her forehead. She looked like she had just run a race, not sat in a chair and watched someone else move. He grunted. "You got a name?" he asked the boy, eyes narrowing a little. "Moreau," the boy said. "Yes, sir." Raiden jerked his chin toward the open space on the floor. "You get 5 minutes, Moreau. Right here. Then you're gone. You try anything else, you don't walk out as easy as you walked in." "Got it." Moreau nodded so fast his hair bounced. "Yes, sir." He took 2 steps back, as if the space between them was a line he didn't dare cross. He looked at Helia. The siren sound crept back into his lips, soft at first, then louder. He started with a tiny shuffle, like he was testing the floor again. His feet slid, his arms swung into slow, exaggerated circles. He leaned his body to one side, stuck his tongue out as if he'd lost control of an invisible bike, and collapsed onto his rear with a heavy thump on purpose. Helia burst into laughter. It came out raw and uneven, like a pipe that hadn't had water in it for a long time and suddenly came back to life. She clapped, missed once, then found the rhythm, palms smacking against the armrests. Raiden didn't laugh, but he didn't walk away either. He moved to the doorway and planted himself there, arms crossed. His eyes followed every move. He watched the way Moreau checked Helia's face between each silly fall, adjusting his act like he was tuning an engine by ear. Moreau pretended to blow into a tiny whistle and waved his hand like a traffic cop. "Pull over, officer," he said, voice high, then deep. "Your bike is too loud. Your hair is too gray. Your face is too serious." Helia shrieked and slapped the metal again. Moreau pointed at Raiden's beard and acted out writing a ticket in the air. "Fine for no smiling in the house," he announced. $20 or one laugh. Your choice." Raiden's jaw tightened, but his mouth twitched. Just a little. Moreau saw it and grinned wider. He dropped to his knees and crawled like a slow-motion turtle. Then he rolled onto his back and pedal-kicked the air, groaning like the weight of the imaginary bike was crushing him. Helia clutched her stomach. Tears stood in the corners of her eyes. Her right leg twitched again, a quick jerk this time, like her muscles were trying to join in. Raiden's gaze snapped to the movement. His throat worked. "Time's up," he said too quickly. Moreau froze mid-pose. He pushed himself back to his feet, panting a little. Sweat shone on his forehead. His chest rose and fell under the thin shirt. "Thank you," Helia said before Raiden could say anything else. Her voice was soft but clear. That was the most fun I've had in a long time." Moreau's smile softened. "You're easy to make laugh," he said. "Most people on the street just glare." "Street," Raiden repeated. Moreau's shoulders dipped. He tilted his head toward the vague direction of town. "I stay around. Bus stops. Under the bridge, mostly. It's dry there when it rains." Raiden chewed on that for a second. "You hungry?" he asked, almost against his will. Moreau's eyes flicked to the kitchen doorway, then away. "I'm okay," he lied. Helia answered for him. "Dad," she said. His stomach was growling while he was dancing. "I heard it over the siren." Moreau's ears went red. Raiden sighed. It came out like air leaving a tire. "You eat," he said gruffly. "Then you go? You don't touch anything else in this house. You understand me? No wandering. No pockets. You come here again, you knock. You don't just appear in my living room." Moreau nodded, eyes bright. "Yes, sir. I can do that. I can knock." Raiden jerked his head toward the kitchen without another word. Moreau slipped past him, moving carefully, like he expected the rules to change mid-step. Helia watched him go, then looked at her own foot again. She shifted in the chair, testing. Her toes gave the smallest of answers. She smiled to herself, a private, secret smile. In the doorway, Raiden stood alone for a moment. He stared at the empty space on the floor where Moreau had just been. Then he turned his head and looked at his daughter. Really looked. Her eyes were alive. Her shoulders were relaxed for the first time in months. The blanket was crooked because she had been moving so much she'd kicked it out of place. He swallowed hard. If you believe one small act of kindness can shake a whole house, hit subscribe right now. People who think nothing ever changes won't. They tap away the second they feel something stir. The next afternoon, the house slid back into its old silence. For a while, Raiden spent the morning in the garage, hands deep in a bike that didn't need him. He unscrewed bolts that were not loose, wiped down chrome that already gleamed. The radio sat on the shelf, quiet. His phone buzzed twice with calls from numbers he recognized but didn't want to answer. Upstairs, the wheels of Helia's chair squeaked now and then. By late afternoon, the sun had shifted high light to low shadows. A stray beam slipped under the edge of the garage door and stretched across the floor like a thin blade. Raiden set his wrench down and wiped his hands on an old rag. A noise drifted through the open crack of the front window. Not a car. Not a dog. A rhythm. Pa, pa, papa. Feet on concrete. Raiden walked through the kitchen, past the table still marked with a faint ring where Moreau's bowl had rested the day before, and stepped into the hallway. Helia was already in position. Her chair faced the front door. Her hands rested on the wheels, fingers curled, ready. Her eyes were locked on the doorknob, like she could make it turn just by staring hard enough. "Who are you waiting for?" Raiden asked, though he knew. She didn't look at him. "I don't know," she said, but the tip of her nose betrayed her. It crinkled the way it did when she tried not to smile. Something thumped gently against the door. Not a fist. More like a knuckle. Then another, a little faster. Knock. Knock. Knock knock. Helia's head jerked up. Her fingers tightened. Raiden pinched the bridge of his nose. "Stay put," he said. He opened the door halfway. Moreau stood on the porch, hair a little flatter, shirt cleaned as best as someone without a washer could manage. His hands were at his sides. His bare toes curled against the cool concrete. "You said knock," he said simply. Behind Raiden's arm, Helia's face peeked into the gap. "You came back," she blurted. Miro's grin flashed. "You laughed. That's like an invitation." Raiden frowned. "Where do you live?" he asked. Moreau tilted his head toward the street again, same vague direction as before. "Under the big bridge near the station," he said. "Sometimes under the bleachers by the old field. Depends who gets there first." "How old are you?" Raiden asked. 13, Moreau said, then added quickly, "I think." The answer landed heavy between them. 13. Under bridges. Knocking on strangers' doors for the chance to dance in their living rooms. Helia cleared her throat. "Dad?" she said. "You said he could come if he knocked." "He knocked." Raiden closed his eyes for a heartbeat. His old brothers would have laughed if they saw him now, standing in his own doorway, bargaining with a boy who didn't even own shoes. He opened the door wider. "You got a clock in that bridge?" he asked. Moreau blinked. "No, sir." "Then listen," Raiden said. "You come here at 4. You leave at 6. You eat before you go. You don't go upstairs. You don't go through my drawers. You don't touch my bikes unless I say so. You understand those rules. You can step inside. You break them, you don't come back. Ever." Moreau nodded as if someone had just offered him a job at a big office. "Yes, sir. 4 to 6. Food. No touching. No breaking. I can do that." He wiped his feet on the mat, even though they were already dirty, and stepped past the line into the house. Helia clapped. A quick, happy burst. "Showtime," she said. They moved back to the living room. This time, Raiden did not hover in the doorway like a guard. He leaned against the wall near the big window, arms crossed, face unreadable. Moreau took his place on the same patch of floor as yesterday. He bounced lightly on the balls of his feet, testing the ground again like it might have changed overnight. "What do you want today?" he asked Helia. "Police? Crash? Slow motion? Scary biker." The last 2 words came out with a glance at Raiden. Helia snorted. "Scary biker," she said. "But make him clumsy." Moreau straightened, puffed out his chest, and pulled his face into a hard frown. He marched back and forth, copying Raiden's heavy steps. He swung imaginary keys. He pretended his beard got caught in his jacket zipper and yanked his own chin, hopping in fake pain. Helia's laughter came easier now, less rusty. Raiden shook his head, but his mouth betrayed him again. The corner twitched. Moreau spotted it and leaned into the joke. He stomped toward the invisible garage, tripped over an invisible oil pan, arms flailing like windmills. He crashed to the ground, rolled, and ended on his back, staring at the imaginary ceiling in shock. "Who put that there?" he yelled, voice deep mocking. "It was not there when I walked in." Helia clapped so hard her palm left a red mark on the metal. Her leg jerked again. Then the other foot twitched, just barely. Sweat shone on her forehead, but this time it came from joy, not strain. Between acts, Moreau stole glances at Raiden. Raiden kept his eyes on Helia. Every time her foot moved, his fingers dug into his own arms. He didn't say a word. He didn't point it out. He let the movements stack up quietly in his mind, one on top of another, like coins in a jar. After a while, Moreau added sound effects. He mimicked the growl of a Harley starting on a cold morning, the sputter of a worn-out chain, the high whine of a bike pushed too hard in second gear. He did it so well that for a second, the empty driveway outside the house felt full. Helia watched him with wide eyes. "You sound like the bikes used to," she said. Raiden's gaze slid over to her. "Used to?" he asked. She flinched a little, like she hadn't meant to say it out loud. "You never start them anymore," she said quietly. "The garage is quiet. I don't hear you swear at the bolts." Moreau, still half bent in his act, paused. He didn't know the history behind those words. He just knew that quiet houses felt heavy. He'd stared at enough of them from the sidewalk. "Maybe," he said, straightening up, They're waiting for the right song. He jerked his thumb toward the window. They're bikes, Raiden muttered. They don't wait for songs. Helia smiled. You do, she said, eyes on her father. You did today. The three of them sat in that line for a breath. A man leaning on a wall, a girl in a chair, a boy on bare feet. None of them belonged together on paper, but the air between them hummed with something new. At 6, Raiden cleared his throat. Time, he said. Moreau stopped mid-spin and nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't ask for more. He just dipped his head toward Helia. Same time tomorrow, he asked, hopeful but not demanding. Helia looked at her father. Raiden took a long second. 4, he said at last. You're late. You lose time. Miro's grin flashed again. I'll be early, he promised. He slipped out the door, leaving a faint trace of sweat and dust, and something else, something like sunshine dragged into a dark room. Helia leaned back in her chair. Her hands rested on the wheels, fingers tapping a small rhythm. Dad, she said. Yeah. When he dances, she said slowly. I forget my legs don't work. She didn't look at him when she said it. She stared at the empty patch on the floor where Moreau had just been. Raiden stared too. He had spent money he didn't have on doctors, machines, plans. He had ridden miles and miles in the past to escape his own thoughts. None of that had done what one hungry boy in a torn shirt had done in 2 afternoons. He didn't know what to call that, so he didn't call it anything. He just said, we'll see if he keeps showing up. If you're standing with Moreau and Helia right now, if you think the world needs more people who show up even when they have nothing, tap like and subscribe. People who only respect money and power won't watch this far. But you did. That means you're different. Days started to bend around 4 o'clock. By noon, Helia was already watching the slow creep of the clock on her wall. She did her exercises with the elastic band the therapist had given her, rolling her shoulders, squeezing her hands, lifting light weights that felt heavier than they looked. The band snapped her fingers once. She hissed, then laughed, the sound small but real. At 3:30, she wheeled herself out to the living room without being asked. The first time she did that, Raiden almost dropped the socket wrench in his hand. He stood in the hallway, watching her move past the old family pictures. Her hands turned the wheels in slow but steady pushes. The rubber squeaked. She didn't wait for him to roll her. She didn't call his name. By 4, she faced the door, as if the house itself had grown a second heartbeat that matched the knock on the wood. Moreau never missed. Sometimes he was a minute early, toe tapping against the step, lips already moving in a quiet song. Sometimes he came at exactly 4, chest heaving, as if he'd sprinted the last block to make sure he wasn't late. Once, he arrived with his hair still wet from the rain, shirt clinging to his thin frame, shoulders shivering. But he came. Every time he knocked. Every time, Raiden opened the door first. He scanned the boy's hands, his pockets, his eyes. He checked the street behind him. Only after that small ritual would he step aside and let him in. Moreau never pushed past him. He waited for the nod. Inside, the routines grew. Some days, Moreau acted out arguments between drivers at the bus station. He played both sides, switching voices so fast Helia had to lean forward to keep up. Other days, he pretended to be a bike that didn't want to start, coughing, sputtering, then roaring to life with an over-the-top howl. He never did the same bit exactly the same way twice. Helia watched him closely. Do the fall again, she'd say. But this time, make the face bigger. So he did. Eyes wide, jaw dropped, arms windmilling like a cartoon. She laughed until her stomach hurt. Between the laughter, other things snuck in. Her hands got stronger. The red marks on her palms from clapping turned into a kind of trophy. When she reached for her water bottle, her grip didn't slip as much. One afternoon, while Moreau spun in a tight circle, she lifted her arms and tried to copy him from the waist up. Her shoulders rolled. Her fingers flicked. You dancing too, he said, mid-spin, and she froze in surprise at her own movement, then smiled and kept going. Raiden kept his place along the wall. He told himself he was there to watch the boy, to protect the house. But his eyes always ended up on Helia. He saw every small shift. The way she sat a little straighter. The way she turned her chair herself, even if it squeaked in complaint. The way her eyes followed not just the dancer, but the space around them, like she was measuring it. One hot afternoon, the air heavy in the room, Moreau was halfway through his slow-motion accident when Helia lifted a hand. Wait, she said, breathless from laughing. Stop. I want to try something. Moreau froze, palm flat on the floor, one knee bent as if locked in mid-fall. Raiden pushed off the wall without where he realized it. What are you doing? He asked. Helia glanced at him, then at her own lap. Her fingers curled around the ends of the armrests. I just want to see, she said. She took a breath like she was about to jump into cold water. Her arms shook before she even started to push. Helia, Raiden began, but his voice came out softer than he planned. He didn't say no. He didn't say stop. He just stood there, caught between fear and hope. She pressed down. For a moment, nothing changed. Her shoulders strained. Her jaw clenched. A small line appeared between her eyebrows. Then, slowly, her hips lifted away from the seat. It wasn't much. An inch. Maybe two. But the air in the room changed. Miro's eyes went wide. 1, he whispered, voice full, as if he was counting the most important seconds in the world. Raiden's throat was dry. 2, he said, stepping closer before he knew he'd moved. Helia's face flushed deep red. 3, she breathed out, and let herself sink back into the chair. Her chest heaved. Sweat rolled down the side of her neck. Her hands slipped off the armrests and dropped into her lap. The house went quiet. Not the old heavy quiet. A different kind. A quiet that felt like someone had just thrown open a window in a locked room, and everyone was afraid to breathe in case the air vanished. Then Moreau exploded. You did it, he yelled, springing to his feet. You flew. You left that chair. I saw it. He spun 3 times in a rush, then dropped to his knees beside her, hands flapping, laughter spilling out, as if his own body couldn't hold it. Helia laughed too, but tears slid down her cheeks at the same time. It was nothing, she said, half sob, half laugh. It was just a little bit. Raiden knelt on her other side, big hands shaking. Nothing, he said, voice breaking on the word. Listen to yourself. You just pushed the whole earth down. He reached out and touched her forehead with his knuckles, a gesture he hadn't used since she was a baby. You're the bravest person in this house, he said. Helia sniffed and wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a damp streak on her skin. I'm scared all the time, she admitted, voice small. Brave isn't not scared, Moreau said quickly. Brave is dancing when your legs hurt, and everyone laughs anyway. He smiled at her in that open, simple way of his. You're brave, he repeated. Raiden looked at the boy. He saw the concrete under the bridge when he closed his eyes. The wet cardboard. The way Miro's thin shoulders hunched against cold. The way he still smiled. Yeah, Raiden said slowly. He would know. That night, after Moreau left with a full stomach and a promise to come back, Raiden stood alone in the living room. He walked around the wheelchair in a slow circle, like it was some strange machine he was seeing for the first time. He stopped where Helia's hips had lifted, staring at the faint slant in the seat cushion. Then he went to the garage. For the first time in a long time, he turned on the radio. An old song crackled out, rough but whole. He laid his hand on the nearest bike seat. The leather was cool and familiar. The engine coughed on the first try, then caught and roared. Upstairs, Helia smiled without knowing why. If you've ever felt like one tiny step was too small to matter, remember Helia's 3 seconds. If you stand with her, hit like and comment 3 seconds of brave. People who mock small progress never understand how heavy it truly is. The next Saturday, the air felt different before anyone even knocked. Helia woke earlier than usual. She stared at the ceiling for a while, then slid her hands along the blanket and slowly pushed herself upright without waiting for her father to come adjust her. When she rolled into the kitchen, Raiden was already at the table, staring into a mug of coffee that had gone cold. He looked up. You're up early, he said. Can you not take me to the clinic today? Helia asked. We went twice this week already. Raiden frowned. We have the appointment. We have him, she said. Raiden didn't answer right away. He took a slow sip of his cold coffee, winced at the taste, then set it down. Clinic helps your legs, he said at last. So does laughing, she replied, turning her chair toward the living room. Besides, they just make me push things and count. He makes me forget I'm counting. On the bridge, Moreau practiced his act. He ran through the bits that made Helia laugh the most, trimming the dull pieces in his head. The fake arguments. The beard caught in the zipper. The slow-motion crash. He added a new one, just for her. He pretended to be one of the grumpy ladies at the bus stop who always smacked him with her purse and told him to move. He could already hear Helia's giggle when he did the voice. At 4, he was on the porch. He knocked his special rhythm. Knock, 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 knock. The door opened, and this time, Raiden didn't block the whole frame with his body. He leaned one shoulder on the wood and studied the boy with tired eyes that had a little less shadow today. You running late? He asked. Feels like the clock's been stuck all day. Moreau blinked, surprised. It's 4, he said, pointing to the sky like it was a clock. Bridge time. Raiden huffed out a sound that might have been a small laugh, then stepped aside. You're lucky she was ready by noon, he muttered. Could have worn a track in the floor, waiting on you. In the living room, Helia had already cleared a wider space. She'd pushed a small table aside all by herself, legs of the chair squealing against the floor. A pillow lay on the ground in case Moreau accidentally hit his head too hard in one of his stunts. You made room, Moreau said, eyes widening. You might fall bigger today, she said. You need space. He grinned at that. Raiden didn't lean on the wall this time. He sat in the old chair by the window, the one that used to be his spot after long rides. His hands rested on his knees. He didn't cross his arms. He didn't pretend he wasn't watching. Halfway through the first routine, the joke slowed. Moreau paused to catch his breath, hands on his hips. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His chest rose and fell fast. His shirt clung to his back. He glanced toward the kitchen, where the smell of leftover stew still lingered. You okay? Helia asked. You can sit. He dropped to the floor with a grateful sigh, legs crossed, toes curled under. You dance like you haven't eaten, she said. He shrugged, eyes on the carpet. I eat, he said. Sometimes twice a day. He said it like it was a big number. Helia's hand brushed her blanket. Where? She asked. He picked at a loose thread on his pants. Bridge, he said. Soup line. Sometimes there's a truck. Sometimes the lady from the church brings bread. Sometimes people at the lights give me coins when I spin. If I get enough, I buy a meat pie from the stall with the red sign. He smiled at that, small and private. It smells like onions in heaven, he added. Where are your parents? She asked, the way kids asked each other at school once upon a time. He shrugged again, one shoulder rising, falling. Don't know my father, he said. My mother used to sing in the kitchen. She made rice that stuck to the pot, but I liked the crunchy bits. His smile faded into something softer. One night she fell asleep and didn't wake up, he went on. There were men. Then there were papers. Then I was in a room with other kids and metal bunks. Then I wasn't. The street is easier than those rooms sometimes. Helia's fingers tightened around the armrest. You leave? She asked. They moved me, he said. Too many times. I stopped unpacking my bag. So one night, I just took it and didn't go back. The bridge doesn't send you to another bridge when it gets bored of you. He picked at the thread until it broke. What about you? He asked, looking up at her. What's your story? She looked down at her legs. I rode too fast, she said. Or someone else did. Or we all did. I remember the sound it made when we stopped. That's all. They sat in that shared quiet. Raiden felt every word from his seat. His hands curled into fists on his knees. His own memory of that sound, metal and road and his own voice shouting her name, flashed behind his eyes. He cleared his throat. Moreau started to apologize. Sorry, he said. I didn't mean to make it sad. I can do the voice of the bus stop lady now. Moreau blinked fast. His throat worked like he'd swallowed something too big. Raiden sat back in the chair. The patch in his closet weighed on his mind again. The word loyalty on the back. All the times the club had said brother, but had never sat on a floor and listened to a kid talk about meat pies and cold concrete. From today, Raiden said, voice steady. You don't eat only if a truck feels like showing up. You eat here. Before you go. Every time. Miro's head snapped up. What? He asked, half smile, half disbelief. You heard me, Raiden said. If my daughter's going to count on your dancing legs to wake up her own, I'm not letting them give out from hunger. Miro's grin came back, bright and sudden. Yes, sir, he said. I can dance better on a full stomach anyway. And Miro? Raiden added. Yes. You're not invisible in this house, he said. Understand. Miro looked at him like no one had ever said those words to him before. He nodded, slow this time. I understand, he said. If you believe no child should have to wonder if they matter, hit subscribe and comment. You are not invisible. People who walk past kids under bridges without a second look won't. But you can take a side right now. The shop heard the news before Raiden did. Bikers talk. They talk at gas pumps, outside bars, in the smoke behind diners. Word moved faster than any phone call. Raiden's got some kid in his house, someone said over a beer. Street rat, another added. Dances for his girl. Like a clown. By the time the week was over, the story had crossed town, picked up dirt, and carried it straight to the old club. They came on a Sunday. Engines rolled into the driveway in a low growl, one after another, until the small front yard felt too full. Patches shone on backs. Boots hit the ground in a line. Helia heard them first. She sat in the living room, watching Moreau act out a nervous mechanic dropping tools every time his boss passed. The rumble from outside cut through his fake clatters like real thunder. Her hand stopped. "Dad?" she asked. Raiden was already on his feet. He knew that sound the way he knew his own heartbeat. He had ridden in the middle of that noise, part of it, for years. His body moved before his brain caught up. He stepped out onto the porch. 3 men stood near the bikes, vests open, sunglasses still on. The one in the middle took off his shades slow, hanging them from his collar with practiced ease. "Gavin," Raiden said. Gavin's beard was thicker than before, more white in it now. The lines at the corners of his eyes had carved deeper. The patch on his back still carried the same skull with wings, the same word above it. "Brother," Gavin said, spreading his arms as if they'd met by chance at a barbecue. "You don't call. You don't ride. We had to come see if you still knew how to open a door." Raiden didn't step forward for the hug. "You found it," he said. "Now what?" Gavin's smile tightened. "Word is," he said, "you've been keeping strange company." The man to his left snorted. "Some stray kid," he added. "Dirty. Always hanging around your garage. People talk, rad. They say you got soft." Raiden's jaw clenched. Inside, the front door creaked a little. Helia had pushed it open a crack. Moreau stood behind her, peeking over the top of her head, eyes darting between the men and the bikes. Gavin's gaze slid past Raiden's shoulder. "You going to introduce us?" he asked. "Or do we have to meet the new family ourselves?" Raiden blocked the doorway with his body. "No need," he said. One of the other bikers laughed. "Look at you," he said. "Guard dog now? Over some street urchin? You forgetting who had your back when things went bad, Rad?" Raiden thought of back doors slammed in his face when he was a kid. He thought of nights in ditches, hiding from men with flashing lights. He also thought of the bridge, the cold concrete under Moreau's thin body, the way the boy still danced. "My back's right here," he said softly, jerking his chin toward the house. "She's sitting in a chair, watching this whole thing. And that street urchin is the first person who's made her laugh since the hospital." Gavin's eyes hardened. "Kids like that bring trouble," he said. "They steal. They talk. They don't belong in places like this. You know that. You taught me that once." Moreau flinched. Helia heard every word. Her fingers dug into the wheel rims until her knuckles went white. Raiden's shoulders rose, filling the doorway. "I taught you to stand by family," he said. "Not to kick kids when they're already on the ground." Gavin stepped closer, boots crunching on gravel. "You swore oaths with us," he said. "On the road. In the back room. You remember? We said brothers first. Patch first. No outsiders. No weakness. What happened to that man?" Raiden smiled then. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the tired smile of someone who had carried too much for too long. "He met his daughter's eyes in a hospital bed," he said. "He listened to doctors say forever. He watched her stop laughing. That man died a little that day. The part that's left doesn't care what you call him." Behind him, the hinges squeaked. Helia rolled the door open wider. Her wheels bumped against his heel. "Dad," she said, voice steady but shaking at the edges. "They're talking about Moreau like he's not here." Gavin glanced at her, then at the boy half hiding behind her chair. "So that's him," he said. "The dancer." Moreau fought the urge to back up. His feet held their ground. "Yes, sir," he said, because that word came to his mouth easier than any other when older men stared at him. "You know what they say about you?" Gavin asked. "They say you hang around people's houses, waiting for a chance. They say kids like you pick pockets while you make them laugh." Moreau swallowed. He did not look at Raiden. He did not look at the bikes. He looked at Helia. "I dance so I don't freeze," he said quietly. "I laugh so I don't cry. If that's trouble, I don't know what to tell you." Gavin sneered. "Listen to that," he said. "Little poet under the bridge." He turned back to Raiden. "You keep him here, you put yourself on the wrong side of things. You know how this works. Cops sniff around boys like him. Then they sniff around anyone they stand next to. You ready to bring that to your door? To your girl?" Helia's jaw tightened. "I'm right here," she said. "Not at your girl." "Helia." And he already brought something to this door. You didn't. Gavin's nostrils flared. Raiden took a slow breath. You want the truth? He asked. Gavin raised an eyebrow. I want my brother back, he said. Raiden reached behind him. His hand disappeared into the dark of the hallway, then came back out holding something folded and worn. His old vest. He turned it so the back faced the yard. The patch caught the light, skull grinning, wings outstretched, word above. Once, this was the only thing I was proud of, he said. I thought this meant I had a family. He wrapped both hands around the leather and, with a sharp, sudden pull, ripped the patch from the back. The sound of stitches tearing cut through the air. The other bikers swore under their breath. Gavin's face drained of color. What are you doing? He hissed. Raiden let the torn patch hang from his fingers. I'm choosing, he said. Her. Him. This house. If your idea of family can't make room for a kid who dances through his own hunger just to make my daughter forget her pain, then it never was family. It was a jacket with a price. He dropped the patch onto the porch boards. The skull landed face up, staring at the sky. You walk away from this. Gavin said slowly, you don't come back. Not for a drink. Not for a ride. Not for help. You understand that. Raiden nodded once. I understand, he said. Do you? Gavin looked from the torn leather to the thin boy to the girl in the chair, whose eyes did not look away. He spat onto the ground. Soft, he said. You went soft. He turned and walked toward his bike. The others followed. Engines started one by one, the sound thick and angry. Gravel spat from under tires. The yard emptied, leaving only the smell of exhaust and the torn patch on the floor. Raiden watched them go until they were just a hum on the far road. Then he bent down, picked up the patch, and folded it once. He didn't throw it away. He just carried it inside. Behind him, Miro's shoulders finally dropped. I made them mad, he said, shame creeping over his features. I always make people mad. Hylia's hand shot out. She caught his wrist before he could turn. You didn't do this, she said. You showed up. They chose what they chose. So did he. Raiden looked at the boy. You did make one thing happen, he said. You made it real clear who my brothers are now. He glanced between the chair and the bare feet. They're standing in this hallway. If you've ever had to walk away from people you thought were family because they couldn't accept your heart, hit like and comment family is who stays. The ones who only care about symbols and not people won't. They already left. The house felt lighter after the bikes left, but the air still carried a trace of their noise. That night, Raiden sat on the old couch with the torn patch on the coffee table in front of him. The TV flickered without sound. He wasn't watching. Hylia and Miro were in the living room too. The radio in the kitchen played low, some old song with a slow drum and a simple guitar line. It drifted through the house like a memory. Miro lay on his back on the floor, one knee bent, one foot tapping the beat. His hands rested on his stomach. For once, he wasn't moving much. Hylia's chair was turned toward the window, where the last of the day's light was fading. They're really not coming back, she said. Raiden didn't pretend to misunderstand. Maybe not, he said. Maybe that's for the best. It hurt to say it. It also felt clean, like pulling a splinter you'd learned to live with. Miro turned his head toward them. Does it feel lonely? He asked. Raiden thought of long rides in the middle of a pack, engines on all sides, the sense that if one bike fell, the others would circle. Then he thought of Hylia in the hospital, alone in a bed while his so-called brothers texted him pictures from the road. Less lonely than watching them call my daughter's friend trash on my own porch, he said. Hylia's mouth tilted up at the corner. Miro sat up. He crossed his legs, placed his palms on the floor, and looked straight at Hylia. Can I tell you a secret? He asked. She nodded. When I stand too long under the bridge, he said, my legs go numb. Cold creeps up from the ground. Sometimes I have to jump and stamp just to remember they're there. It hurts. But when I stop, it feels worse. He shifted closer. When you lifted yourself the other day, he went on, I saw that face. The one people make when they want to stop because it hurts, but they don't. That's the face that keeps you alive. Hylia looked down at her knees. She flexed her fingers on the armrests, feeling the worn texture under her palms. What if I fall? She asked, voice very small. Miro glanced at the pillow she'd laid on the floor days ago. Just in case. Then we laugh, he said. Then we try again. Falling is my specialty. He flopped sideways as if he'd tripped, landing half on the pillow, half off, limbs all over the place. Hylia snorted. See? He said, grinning from the floor. Didn't die. Raiden watched them, his chest full of too many feelings at once. Fear, pride, love, loss, hope. He stood up. Music up, he said, walking to the kitchen. He turned the radio dial until the guitar got a little louder, the beat a little clearer. When he came back, he didn't lean on the wall. He didn't sit. He walked to the back of Helia's chair and rested his hands lightly on the handles. You want to try? He asked. She swallowed. Now, she said. Best time we've got, he replied. We're all here. The floor's clean. You've got a clown on one side and your old man on the other. Seems as good as it gets. Moreau scrambled to his feet. He moved to Helia's right side and crouched down, close enough to grab if she slipped, but not touching her yet. I've got you, he said. If you want me. She nodded once. Her heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her throat. She wrapped her hands around the armrests. The room shrank to her breath, the beat of the song, and the steady warmth of two people waiting, not pushing. Her arms shook before her weight shifted at all. What if I can't? She whispered. Raiden's voice was soft and certain. Then today we learn where the edge is, he said. And tomorrow we lean on it a little harder. Moreau counted in a whisper. 1, he said. Just to get ready. Helia took a breath. 2, he said. For your old rides. She saw the road in her mind. The wind. Her dad's back. The way the world had once rushed past in blurs of color. 3, he said. For right now. She pushed. Her shoulders felt like they were on fire. Her arms shook so hard her teeth clicked. For a second, her body didn't move. Then her weight shifted forward. Her hips rose off the seat. Her knees trembled, then firmed just enough to hold her. Her feet pressed into the floor. The blanket slipped and fell around her ankles. She was standing. Not straight. Not tall. Her legs shook like leaves in a storm. But she was up. The chair no longer held her whole body. The earth did. Miro's mouth fell open. You're doing it, he said, voice suddenly thick. You're actually doing it. Raiden's hands hovered near her waist, not quite touching, ready if she fell. He didn't say anything at first. His eyes shone. His jaw clenched. A tear slipped out anyway, cutting a bright line through the grime on his cheek. Helia held herself there for 1 second. Then 2. Then 3. She laughed and cried at the same time. I'm standing, she said, as if she had to tell the room what it already saw. Dad, I'm standing. Her legs gave out gently. She dropped back into the chair, breath coming in fast bursts, hair sticking to her forehead. No one rushed to wipe her tears. They let them sit there, proof of the weight of the moment. Moreau hooped, spinning in a wild, awkward circle, then collapsed to his knees, pounding the floor with both hands. Champion, he shouted. You're a full-blown champion. Raiden knelt in front of his daughter. He took her shaking hands in his big, rough ones. You just did what every doctor in every room said you might never do, he said. Remember that next time you hear the word can't. Helia nodded, still crying, still smiling. Her whole face glowed. Moreau sat back on his heels and wiped his nose with the back of his hand. I knew your legs were just sleeping, he said. They snore loud, but they wake up. They didn't post videos. They didn't call any news stations. They didn't shout the story to the street. They just kept going. Day after day, Moreau came at 4 and left at 6. Day after day, Helia stood for 3 seconds, then 5, then more. Day after day, Raiden cooked 1 extra plate, then set 1 more chair at the table. Soon, breakfast had 3 voices instead of 2. The bridge still existed. Other kids still slept under it. But one boy didn't. He had a mattress now, in the small room off the garage that used to hold dusty boxes. The first night he lay there, staring at the ceiling, he kept 1 hand on the wall just to make sure it didn't disappear. He fell asleep to the sound of someone snoring in the next room and a bike cooling down in the garage, metal ticking softly. The house that once shook with engines and then sat in heavy silence now had a different sound. Laughter, clattering dishes, a girl's footsteps, slow, careful, but real, mixed with the roll of her chair. Sometimes, Raiden would stand in the doorway and just listen. He understood something he had never really known before. Money could fix bikes. Patches could impress men. But it was love, loud, clumsy, stubborn love, that had reached into his daughter's darkness and pulled her back. And it had come wearing torn shoes and a grin that refused to quit. One evening, as the sun slipped low and painted the road outside in soft gold, Raiden leaned against the porch rail. Helia stepped out onto the front step, one hand on the doorframe, the other wrapped around Miro's shoulder for balance. They looked like they'd always been there. Raiden shook his head and smiled. I thought I had everything once, he said quietly. Bikes, brothers, roads. Turns out, I had nothing that mattered. He looked at them. Now I do. If this story touched you, if you believe that sometimes the strongest people are the ones the world tries hardest not to see, say so in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. If you stand with kids like Miro and fighters like Helia, hit subscribe and join this family of people who still believe in second chances and stubborn kindness. Thank you for spending this time here. Stay kind, stay strong, and keep watching, because as long as stories like this are told, no one has to feel invisible.